Have been subject to 3 different layoffs. After that, I decided that, okay, I need to take control of my career and my future. And the only way to do that is by becoming an entrepreneur. You need to be able to package exactly what your talents are and make it in a presentable format. Once you package that together, then it's a matter of just getting in front of as many people as you can. If you have a compelling offer and you have you're targeting the right audience, then you can create dollars for yourself. As an entrepreneur, you have to have that pipeline built up. It gets really ugly really fast if you don't, and then you're scrambling to try to build that momentum.
What's the most underrated quality of a great leader?
Remembering where they came from.
Hey, Fernando.
Hi, Sudev. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Great. Welcome to Business Klub. And in Business Klub, what we're doing is we're starting a series called Small Business Spotlight. So you were one of the early ones. So congratulations and welcome to Business Klub.
I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. Where were you born, were raised, and when did you graduate and things like that?
Sure. So I was actually born in New York City.
Oh, wow.
But I never really lived there until I got older. And the reason why is because when I was younger, my father joined the military and we actually moved around frequently. So I've lived all across the United States. Also, I've lived in Germany, where I went to high school, and in Central America, where I did some elementary school in Panama.
No, Panama.
So I don't really have a hometown. I'm just sort of a product of our planet.
Awesome. And where did you do your schooling? And you did the schooling in Panama? Or you did
No, so I don't do anything traditionally or conventionally.
Okay.
So I started my school at University of Colorado.
Okay.
And then I decided that I really got into computers and I felt like what I was learning was less than what I already knew. So I decided to enter the workforce my sophomore year. So I moved to Tampa, Florida, and I found myself working for a company there that developed the precursor of CRM software.
No, okay.
Eventually, I was in the help desk there, and eventually that took me to New York, where I did finish my degree in computer science and also information systems. And then finally, I went back later and got my MBA in marketing management.
No, okay. So you did computer system and you did your MBA marketing management.
That's correct.
Awesome. And how about your family? Yeah.
So family, I have two children. However, they're 13 years apart. So one is 11 and the other one's 24. So we have basically 2 first children. And the reason why is because I was in consulting for a while and traveling a lot. And of course, that puts a damper on trying to raise children. So it just so happened that it worked out this way.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
I know it's a happy phase, when you're especially raising children and you have a lot to. Good. So I believe you were in the banking sector and you worked for Bank of America at one point, did you?
Yeah, I sort of joke that I've done every bank here in Charlotte. So I've worked for Bank of America, Wells Fargo, as well as Truist. And then I've worked for a smaller bank in South Florida. And then I've also done, again, I was in consulting, so I've had exposure to a number of other financial services as well. But banking has been my primary profession or industry for my profession for many years.
How long were you there with them?
So I was at Bank of America for close to 6 years.
And overall?
So I'd say that in my 26 plus year run of career, I've been with banks probably about 16, 17 years.
So a total of 17 years of experience or 25?
About 26 years of experience.
26.
So the rest of the time was spent with, for example, I worked at Forrester Research right before I became an entrepreneur. Also worked for an advertising agency here in Charlotte. And also I did consulting with Accenture too.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything. That's a good mix, finance plus marketing.
Correct. And that's how I sort of found my career, that I've been straddling the fence basically between technology and marketing within financial services.
Oh, awesome.
And so I've felt that has really helped to propel my career and give me a unique perspective compared to many others who just focus on one or the other.
Cool. So you said you became an entrepreneur recently? Right?
It's been about 18 months now.
18 months. And how has that journey been?
It has been a roller coaster. That's probably the best way to describe it. The moment that I made an announcement that I became an entrepreneur, I did get a lot of interest in my skills. So I was able to basically start a gig and engage with customers pretty quickly. But then once that sort of initial interest waned, then there was quite a challenge trying to fill up the pipeline with interested parties. It's just a matter of, as an entrepreneur, you need to juggle not only working with your clients, but also building up those relationships for your next set of clients. And that's something I didn't fully understand or realize until I was actually in the thick of it.
What exactly do you do for your clients, or how did you start the journey as an entrepreneur, and what have you evolved into? If you could just explain that.
So my journey, one thing with financial services is that it's a very lucrative industry, but unfortunately it's also very volatile. So unfortunately I have been subject to 3 different layoffs.
Oh, okay.
And so after that,
expert?
yes, believe it or not. So the first one hits you hard because it's completely unexpected. And then you become a little bit of a veteran. And by the time the third one came along, I'm like, okay, this is how it is. But after that, I decided that, okay, I need to take control of my career and my future. And the only way to do that is by becoming an entrepreneur. One of my layoffs, I was actually received an award a year prior that I was one of the top 5% in the company.
Wow. And then
because of a leadership change, they got rid of the entire department, including myself. So in other words, you're never safe. And that's what led me to entrepreneurship. I knew that I had a unique set of skills that I can offer to clients that maybe don't want that commitment of an employee. And so therefore I can come in as an expert and offer a third-party opinion and provide services that really meld together marketing and technology so that they can now try to promote their own organization.
Cool. So what's your company called? Rockture?
Rockture is the name of the company, yes.
How do you spell it?
Rokture.
What does that mean?
It actually doesn't have much of a meaning. The reason I chose it is because the domain was available. Of course, a .com domain is quite elusive. Yeah. But once I started with that company name, what I've really built around it is that a rock, of course, it creates stability. And so that's what I'm building, is a foundation for organizations. So a structure made of rock, or Rockture, that helps them to progress in this digital type of environment that a lot of companies really feel that they're lacking in.
Cool. And what kind of specialization do you do in Rockture?
So specialize on 2 different tracks. The first one is that with all the experience I have in marketing, in financial services, then I really focus on marketing strategy for financial services. And I offer a fractional CMO service there where I come in from an executive perspective and build a strategy that they can then use that is sustainable for them going forward. And do this with the size of their organization in mind and also their core clientele. The second track that I offer within my company is basically growth advisory / coaching. So I'll work with small businesses, even though they span outside of my financial services experience. What I know is that there's a lot of companies that still need these types of skill sets, and they can't really afford to bring somebody in full time. So I'll advise them so that they can try to build these skills for themselves and help to promote their organizations from within.
Sure. So let's just break the first part a little bit and go deep dive, because the reason why we're doing this podcast is to inspire other people who might be in a similar boat as yours, who's maybe in the banking industry for 20 plus years and they're trying to retire or find a plan B. And if they can get into the digital marketing strategy and help other financial clients, what would they be looking for? And how would they prepare themselves to become someone like you?
You need to be able to package exactly what your talents are and make it in a presentable format. So you need to have a sort of very precise and concise pitch that you can present to clients, but essentially put together what it is that you're good at and where you have differentiation between yourselves and other individuals that might be in your industry. Once you package that together, then it's a matter of just getting in front of as many people as you can. And there's multiple strategies in doing so. Networking is a great way, but there's also just even cold calling and cold emailing are potential avenues of trying to promote yourselves. But it's really just getting in front of the right people and letting them know how you can help them and making sure that you're flexible enough to offer a service that is in demand for them.
Yeah. So you talked about fractional CMO. Explain to me, what is a fractional CMO? I know you said 10 hours of your time with the particular group of people or company, but if I have to become a fractional CMO, what do I need to do to become one? Number one. Number two is, if I have to give 10 hours a week, to me, that's a lot of time to a company. So how do you justify the cost? So what should be, from a pricing standpoint, how should I go about pricing? So there are two folds to the question.
Sure. So the first one is I decided to become a fractional CMO because I recognized that, again, I've been working in marketing for a tremendous amount of time. So that was a natural progression for me. What I ended up doing, though, is I connected with a company that specialized in sort of coaching fractional CMOs. I knew I needed to hit the ground running.
Company?
So it was called CMOX.
Oh, CMOX.
And it's an individual by the name of Casey Stanton runs it. And he did a great job just putting together the framework and the sort of approach that you need to go out to the world and announce that you're a
So that was a
fractional
private
CMO.
coaching that you did. You took a certificate course, and then you understood how the market is, and then you started going after the clients.
That's correct. And so I wanted to, again, make sure that I would be mentored by someone who'd already gone through it because I did not really have the runway to fail.
Yeah, of course.
So I made that investment in myself. And
How much
in
did
doing
that
so,
cost, if I may ask?
So that was, I think, a total of $6,000 over a 3-month period.
Okay.
So
And it
pretty
was
significant investment.
One-on-one, or is it?
It was a group program. However, Casey was accessible all the time. He was a great mentor. And also the materials that you're given to start your business are worth a lot more than the investment that was made. So once that was done, then I felt comfortable going out to the marketplace and saying, this is who I am and this is what I'm doing. Now it's a matter of tailoring all those materials so that they fit your working style. So there's still a lot of work that has to be done, but at least you're sort of at the 30-yard line instead of the 5-yard line, starting from your own end zone. And then in terms of pricing, so what I tried to go with is that I figured I'd need about $250 an hour to sort of match what I was making before, as well as benefits and, of course, all the overhead. And so that's what I've sort of priced myself as. That's my target. If I find that I'm really adding a tremendous amount of value to a client, then I'll go ahead and I'll raise that. And then with smaller clients, then I'll scale back tremendously just because I know that they can't really justify that kind of expense.
And when you obviously get into that business and you sign some contract, do you sign for 6 months, 1 year? How does it work? So
with my corporate CMO, or fractional CMO, I signed for a minimum of 3 months. Okay. And then at that point, we're able to evaluate, and I tried to extend them to 12 months. However, I know it's a big expense, so we can go month to month as long as I have a month notice that we're going to terminate the relationship. Oh, okay. On coaching, on the other hand, I do ask for a 1-year relationship because that is at a lower price point, and we really need that amount of time to make sure that they get the value that they need out of my services. Yeah, absolutely. No, I understand because I have a digital marketing and I do feel that if you're not committed, you're going half-ass. So. Exactly. And it takes time to really materialize and see the value in what it is that you're creating. Unfortunately, the industry, or not the industry, but a lot of the tactics take some time to really create momentum. Sure. And so 3 months really is a short period of time. I just do that so that in case it's not working, they have the ability to, again, terminate that relationship. Makes sense. I read somewhere, I think it's right here in the questions, when I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, I believe you're also a certified profit coach. Correct. Explain to me what that means. So what that is it's similar to what I did with CMOX. So I wanted to go into coaching. However, I wanted to then have a group or a group of mentors that will help me launch in the right way. And so I joined this profit coach organization and went through a certification course. And what that does is that it provides me with frameworks and insight into how to help businesses grow without a tremendous amount of investment in marketing or advertising. So I've got access to a proprietary platform. I've got access to a huge community of other profit coaches that have experiences throughout all different types of industries and scenarios and situations. So when somebody hires me as a coach, they not only get me, but they also get the collective knowledge and experience of this entire community, that can help with essentially any problem. So I felt that was a really great investment on my part to, again, ensure that when I'm presenting myself and my services, I have the credentials and the knowledge and backing to make sure that I'm going to help my client succeed.
Okay, so this gives me some insight into how you approached your practice. So what you did is you first understood what your strong points are and what your passion is about, and then you took a certified coach, and then you became a certified coach or a certified CMO.
Fractional CMO.
Fractional CMO.
Correct.
And then you approach companies.
That's correct.
So would you approach like a financial services company with both being a certified profit coach, or one of them, would it be a fractional?
Normally a financial services company is likely going to choose the executive role instead, because they don't really need a coaching role. However, what I do is that I have an initial discussion with them. And in this discussion, there's no pitching of products or anything really. Basically, I learn what their challenges are. So it's interesting that you bring that question up, because I did have a client recently where I thought we were going into this with a fractional CMO discussion. And after having that initial conversation with them, I found out that they really need coaching in order to be able to drive their business. I wrongly assumed that they already had all their marketing set up, et cetera. And so I sort of flipped my thought there and approached them with this alternate service instead. So that's where I feel that there's a benefit in being able to offer both tracks. But typically, it's the larger companies will go for the fractional CMO, and by larger, I'm still talking relatively small financial institutions.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
And then the sort of local business will go with the coaching services instead.
So I was looking at it. Looks like you also dived into sales, operations, branding, and the overall client experience. Walk me through what you do there, and how do you. That's marketing is one side, and all the other things are like separate.
Sure. Yeah. Well, part of the great thing about having the experiences that I have is that it's been very varied in terms of, even though I was in marketing positions, I had exposure to a lot of other parts of the organizations. And what I've discovered is when I went out there with marketing solutions, oftentimes I would discover that there was a lot of other challenges within that organization. And those challenges would keep that organization from being able to succeed. So what I then decided is that I need to take advantage of this and present this as part of my overall solution. So granted, I may not be as deep knowledge as somebody who is a pure operations expert, but I understand how operations or sales impacts marketing. And as a result of that, I figured that there's opportunities here to demonstrate where you can create additional efficiencies, either by the way of technology or just processes. And that will help empower marketing to be able to succeed. Because if you don't have that foundation built, now unfortunately your marketing, it can be as great as it can be, but if sales is falling flat and not doing their part of the job, or operations, then you're not going to be able to grow your organization.
Of course, yeah. So it's one is dependent on the other.
Absolutely. It's all a package deal.
Yeah. So somewhere you mentioned you are also a growth advisor. How does a growth advisory differ from a traditional digital marketing strategy, or of those kind?
Typically with digital marketing strategy engagements, they tend to be finite. So you have a project, or you have a goal that you're trying to reach. And when you do so, then that project is essentially over. So with a growth exactly, it's just there's an end in sight. Yeah. Exactly. So with the growth advisory, on the other hand, it's intended to be a long-term relationship. It's intended to overcome the immediate challenges and now help you grow as an executive or a founder or owner, so that you can become better in the way that you run your business.
So is the growth advisory to the founder, or is a growth advisory to the company?
It's for the founder generally, because it helps them prepare themselves to become exactly. However, there are a couple of scenarios now where like, let's say there's affiliates or franchises of an organization that I come in to coach, and we end up coaching their affiliates or their franchisees so that they can help to grow their businesses more successfully.
Awesome. Okay. Walk me through some experiences that you have had with clients who have seen some success in the last 18 months. Doesn't have to be big success, but what are a little success that you've seen?
So I have one local client that I was actually shocked by the results. So they told me they had a budget for advertising that was pretty small, less than you'd probably spend in lunch on a daily basis. Yeah. And so I'm thinking, okay, we'll be able to make some headway, but I don't expect a lot of successes.
$50 a day or something?
It's less than that.
That's okay.
And so I went out there and I did all the work and made sure to create one of the things, and we can talk about this a little later, that I made sure of is that we have a compelling offer, as that's going to be the lead in and the hook into the interest that clients are going or prospects are going to have in that organization. So we put the campaign out there, and it took a little while to build momentum, but now that it's out there, then they're seeing a multitude of conversions taking place online, which again was surprising to me. Now, granted, again, this isn't a big company and this isn't a huge spend, but it showed me that the concepts are sound regardless of the size of your organization and the size of your budget. If you have a compelling offer and you have you're targeting the right audience, then you can create dollars for yourself, and your return on investment will be favorable as long as you follow the right formula.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about that talks about, you said Facebook, is that Facebook ads?
That was Meta ads, yeah.
Meta
Facebook
ads,
and Instagram.
Instagram, okay. So are you a one-man army, or do you have a team?
So I'm a solopreneur. However, what I do is I tap into freelancers on an ad-seated basis. So it really depends on how much bandwidth I'm dedicating to a specific client. So there's been instances where I tell them, well, I'm going to need additional resources to make this happen, but then they don't really require a lot of care and feeding. So in that case, then I will jump in and do some of those creative tasks or other tasks that may not necessarily be an executive level task, but I'll do it because it's part
of the hour.
Exactly, and so it really depends on how much bandwidth they need from me as to whether I will bring in freelancers or not. But it's certainly always an option.
Do you source the freelancers locally, or do you do it through Upwork or Fiverr? Or
I've got contacts that I've used in the past and that I've already built an affinity with. Yeah. So that's usually my first level support. If it's a little bit above the budget of the client, or maybe they're not available or whatever, then I will go out to Fiverr or Upwork and find some people.
Cool. Talk to us about some strategic growth and marketing insights. If you were to develop a marketing strategy, typically to a client like the one that you have, how long do you make that marketing strategy for? 12 months, 18 months? How does it go?
I try to do a phased approach. So we're looking at a 90 days sort of, let's get a quick win first. Because I want to, again, demonstrate that this is a worthwhile investment on their part. And also, a lot of times there's low-hanging fruit that we can take advantage of. So 90 days, and then after that, we're looking at quarterly sort of wins. So then we'll be at a 6-month mark, a 9-month mark, and a 12-month mark. So the strategy really incorporates an entire 12-month calendar timeframe, but there's milestones that take place on a quarterly basis so that we can make sure that we're trying to achieve whatever goal they're trying to attain.
Well, let's assume I'm your client, and I have this business club, for example, and we're trying to attract 250 members next year. What would be some of my quick wins?
So quick wins are, first of all, you've mentioned members. Yeah. What do those members look like? What are their attributes? What attracts them to Business Club? The second part is what makes Business Club different than any other networking organization. Right. So these are all things that we need to document and we need to figure out. The third part is, okay, that's your 250 is your goal, but now what are your overall goals? Are you trying to create revenue from these individuals? Is it just engagement and attendance? Yeah. So we need to define all of that, figure out what the KPIs are, and then in that case, we'll be able to figure out, okay, this is the offer we need to go with, this is who we need to target, and this is the channel we need to utilize to get to those individuals. And then we'll build a plan. Sometimes it's not entirely digital. So even though I get brought in oftentimes to build a digital strategy, it's actually useful sometimes to go outside of digital because you're now breaking from the masses. Right. So with the experience that I have, I can recommend things like snail mail, even television or radio, billboard advertising. A lot of those things do work depending on your situation.
Okay. So I know you advise small businesses and you advise financial services in particular. How do you go about client acquisition strategy? How do you go about getting? I know you talked about cold emails, and I talked about some of this, but what are your what strategies did work for you?
I mean, I've tried a little bit of everything. So I've even done cold calling, which I'm not a fan of it, but it does get you in front of people. But essentially, I've used a combination of cold emailing, which my response rates are way below industry averages, but it still does work. I use LinkedIn extensively, and then I also use advertising on things like Meta and also Google retargeting. So that combination gets a number of people in front of me. I also have a VA that I actually brought in to help me with LinkedIn outreach, just to try to create more additional connections.
Right.
It's work that I can do easily, but it's just that, again, when you're doing everything else, it helps to sometimes get people to assist you on some of those more mundane tasks.
Right.
So I won't say that I've had tremendous success on any one of them, but collectively it's helped to fill up my calendar.
So when you approach them, you say you talked about multiple strategies of outreach. So how do you spend, or how much do you spend in every month, or whenever you're starting off? Did you have a budget that you work with?
I was trying to stay like around the $2,000 a month mark. And I know that seems like a lot, but I was doing a lot of experimentation. And that's one of the things that with paid media, a lot of people give up because they don't see results immediately. So I knew that I was going to have to spend this much and then finally get to a point where I have enough data where I can figure out what works for me. Now, like for example, this time of the year, I've cut back on spending just because I figure that a lot of people aren't looking. But come January, I'll probably increase back to that level again, along with launching more cold email campaigns and also doing some more remarketing too. So so that 2,000 is split between social media and Google ads and remarketing.
Oh, okay. So what would be a good mix?
So a good mix, I mean, what I like about the cold emails, aside from the cost of the list, the infrastructure is pretty inexpensive. So that's the one that I like to scale with. It's just the response rate isn't that great, and you get people that aren't too happy with you reaching out to them. The ads are the one that I appreciate the most, but the ads work better for me for the coaching side of the business. When it comes to the executive fractional CMO service, I'd say that the Meta campaigns don't really work as effectively, and then LinkedIn sometimes gets a little too expensive. So that's the reason I sort of stay away from that. So for LinkedIn, I use more social or outreach, as I mentioned before, that my VA does, and then the cold emailing. So it's a combination of all of those.
All of that. Okay. So if someone were to start afresh, someone who is who's got about 15, 20 years of experience in the banking or financial sectors, doesn't matter whichever industry they are. If they have to get started on a business like yours, how much do you think they should have a capital with?
Well, I would recommend to try to start on a part-time basis first. Build up your contacts, keep your day job. I didn't have that choice because I was laid off. So that's why I chose to connect with CMOX and Profit Coach, because I needed a structure that was proven to work so that I can hit the ground running and start making money, because I didn't have any more money coming in. So that's the first thing, is I would really start to build the business as a side gig and a side hustle, and build up your networking, make sure that your offer is resonating with people, even if you're just coming in like on a consultative basis and just providing quick recommendations. After that's done, then I would recommend, the cost, your living expenses are probably going to be higher than your business expenses, honestly. So cut down your expenses as much as possible, and then maybe allocate like $2,500 to $3,000 between advertising and just technology, events that you'll want to attend, and any sort of additional promotional fees that you're going to have to incur those costs in order to be really comfortable.
So roughly $2,000 to $3,000 a month is.
I would say so, yeah.
And how long do you think you would take to break even, or to start getting some traction from the market?
The good thing is with the CMO.
One client is enough.
Yeah, exactly. One fractional client. So for example, there was one campaign where I spent about $4,000 in advertising, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. But then I got a customer out of it. So that means that within half a month, I paid that $4,000 off.
Yeah, okay.
So when you look at the ROI on something like that, that's a lot to spend on ads, But now when I look at it from a yearly perspective, I won the lottery basically when it came to that investment.
Right, of course, yeah.
So yeah, it's when you have to make sure that the pricing is aligned with what you're putting out in terms of expenses. And if you're chasing that $250 an hour mark, then the investments that you're making should pay off for you.
That's great. So that gives me an idea. So if someone who got, God forbid, say maybe laid off or they choose to retire, expect about 3 to 4 months of spends worth $2,500 to $3,000, but spend it wisely.
Yes.
And, obviously do all the non-expensive things like networking and other things where you can actually go and meet people and spread the word around.
Correct.
Okay.
Your my first opportunity that I was able to capitalize on was actually from a word of mouth, from a referral.
Oh, wow.
So someone that I knew that they knew that a company needed some help, and that's how I was able to get that. So that is very valuable and probably your hottest lead in terms of getting your foot in the door in an organization.
Terrific. I would like to ask some questions around the trends and industries.
Sure.
Industry perspective. So what's your thought on where the market is heading? There's a lot of AI, generative AI coming into the picture. There's a lot of data that is being churned. Where do you see the role of a fractional CMO vis-a-vis the market changes in the market?
I think that's because that actually highlights a great point as to why a fractional CMO is needed, because it really does become overwhelming for most organizations. There's this multitude of technology that's being developed, and a lot of it is very useful. But what a lot of companies end up doing then is they just go based on what the industry is saying is the solution. So as a result of that, especially for small to mid-sized financial organizations, they overspend on technology, and they create this technology stack that really has a lot of redundancy, or they don't make use of 80% of the features. So what I see is really the consolidation of functionality across these platforms, and again, getting back to what is really needed, which is interaction with their prospects and their clients, and doing so in a way where it's something that's not very cumbersome in terms of trying to just create a number of different AI content and sending it their way, but instead there's personalization, there's positive engagement, and just exactly that's a critical part that a lot of AI solutions unfortunately miss.
Yeah. So the services sector that you're chasing after, the financial services in particular, it's very highly regulated and competitive. How do you overcome that challenge? Because you just cannot post everything on social media. I know for a fact because I work for Bank of America. They're anal about what you can do and what you cannot do on social media, even as an employee, even if it doesn't conflict.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. So in fact, I remember at my time at Bank of America just arguing with legal and risk and compliance because my offers would be this big and the disclosures on the bottom would be this big. And that's just a necessary evil.
Right.
You learn to work around it. There's certain things. You spot trends and patterns of what you can and can't say. So you always have to have a sort of a backing for whatever statement you have out there. So if you say that this product does this, you need to make sure that there's a disclosure.
The claim should be backed up.
Absolutely. But more than that, what you want to do is to create something that's not necessarily talking about what the product does or service, but instead what it's going to do or how it benefits the pain point of your prospect or your client. And so in doing that, it sort of now eliminates the whole thing about, well, we can't say that because our product doesn't do that. But instead, it's addressing the problem that the individual who's looking at your product or services is involved in. So that's where it really helps to, again, target properly and to really understand who your target audience is.
So are you marketing the product itself, or are you marketing a lead magnet to the product?
It really depends, because the thing is with financial services on digital, it's not often that somebody's just going to convert without either human interaction or a lot more research. So a lot of times the lead magnet is a necessary evil because they need to establish trust first.
Yes.
Now with a bigger brand, you can probably avoid some of that, but even so, still, there's an element of trust that needs to be created in order for somebody to convert on a financial services product.
I think we touched upon a a significant term in digital marketing called lead magnet.
Yes.
Can you expand a little bit on that? I'm sorry, I'm a marketer, so I just tend to speak the same language.
So a lead magnet is an asset or a piece of collateral that is something that the organization doing the marketing gives to the prospect. To sort of give them
it's like a bait.
Exactly. Well, in nicer terms, instead of calling it bait, because we're not trying to necessarily hook them, but we're trying to benefit them. Yeah. So it's a sample of what it is that you can potentially offer to them. So in the old days, they would do like white papers, for example. They would do maybe PDFs, but people's attention span has gotten a lot more limited now. Yeah. So sometimes it could just be like a 30-second Loom video, just saying that, hey, this is the problem you have. This is how we can help you, or this is how we've helped other customers in the past, and these customers are like you, so therefore you should look into us. So that's basically what a lead magnet is. It's something that the prospect gets from you for free without any commitment or anything, and it helps to make that engagement a little smoother and easier because you're not asking for a conversion immediately.
Okay. So can a free trial be a lead magnet?
It can be, but it also, sometimes the free trial doesn't really do anything to sell your product or service. So that's the issue, is that I've gotten free trials before and then I forget I have them. And then they come and they try to tell me, hey, are you ready to buy? And I'm like, I don't really see the benefit. Yeah. So it really does require something that educates and shows that it's beneficial to that individual to consider your product or service.
Cool. So you did some certification from Forrester you mentioned earlier.
Correct.
And what are the most impactful frameworks and methodologies you worked on or you recommend to the audience?
The frameworks at Forrester, I mean, they've got hundreds of thousands of them. I worked in the marketing operations department there, and one of the things that I discovered was that there was a formal framework for account-based marketing. So, and this is a concept in which I think most good marketers do it anyway, but Forrester helped to outline exactly what it is. And basically, it's that when you are trying to market a service to a large organization, you might often have multiple decision makers. So you need to take that into account, not just look at each individual as an individual, but instead part of a collective team where that entire team is going to be driving that decision. So that was a really important framework. Other than that, there were also some others regarding, for example, the redundancies that I mentioned in terms of technology. So we had a practice where we would actually look at the technology stack, see where we have significant overlap. And in some cases, I helped companies save over 6 figures when it came to just doing away with technology that was purchased because some salesperson said it would be a good idea.
So removing the noise, basically removing
exactly.
all the clutter.
Stick with just the core that you need and save a lot of money in the process and hassle.
So you're helping companies, achieve and sustain growth. You're a growth advisor to many of them. What lessons have you learned from that exercise?
So what I've learned is, number one, never assume anything about a company, because even the ones that present themselves as the most innovative, they oftentimes have a lot of skeletons in their closet that need to be addressed. But the other thing too is that even though industries have their own sort of nuances, at the end of the day, the marketing game is pretty much the same, regardless of what it is that you're trying to promote. And so a lot of the practices, and this is why I decided to expand to other businesses other than financial services, a lot of the best practices that work in banking and other financial services can also work at a car dealership. They could also work for a bug pest control business. It's just really trying to put your offer out there in front of the right audience and making sure that it addresses whatever it is that's bothering them that you can really help with. So that's been eye-opening for sure.
Cool. And what are the mistakes or challenges that you faced?
So the mistakes, I mentioned one earlier, which is as an entrepreneur, you have to have that pipeline built up. It gets really ugly really fast if you don't, and then you're scrambling to try to build that momentum. So that's the first thing. But on the client side, I would say that listening to clients. So I've had instances where I think I'm presenting exactly what they're looking for. They say, okay, but then they come back a little while later and say, no, that's not at all what I need. So you have to listen, read between the lines. So what they say may not actually be what they mean. A lot of people want to be nice, and so they don't want to hurt your feelings or anything. So lay it out, in the beginning.
Clarity.
Exactly, that we need to be straight with each other and we need to be open, have open dialogue, because otherwise we're going to slow down our progress if we don't have that channel of communication open.
Cool. So, what advice? Now we touched upon a lot of things. So, what advice would you give to some young entrepreneurs? Let's say Aryan. Aryan is 22 years, 20 going 23, and then he's starting off. And let's say if he wants to become a fractional CMO, what advice would you give him starting off? That is, as a 22-year-old, and then we'll talk about somebody who's an experienced person as well.
Get as much experience as possible, for sure. Because the thing is that if I were to enter into this when I was younger, I probably wouldn't have seen as much as I had. And so therefore, it would have been a little more difficult for me to establish the credibility that I need to go in there and say that I know what I'm doing. Exactly. So, and don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. I mean, if your job is to do task A, B, or C, go ahead and look for opportunities to do X, Y, and Z as well. I mentioned earlier that I started in technology, I moved over to marketing, and now I have a very strong skill set that combines those two. And the reason for that is because every time I saw an opportunity, I'm like, I need to learn that, and I need to understand why this is. So even today, I have, experience in all parts of the banking experience, because I made sure that I learned at a minimum, how things work and how they can be made more efficient. And that's helped me tremendously.
Great. So that combination is terrific, technology, marketing, and then you're serving the financial services, which has got
For sure.
money. That's awesome. So if you had one piece of advice to businesses that are looking to thrive in this digital age, what would that be?
It's going to be that you need to create what I call the position of market dominance. And what that means is that there's so much noise in digital. And the thing is, the barrier of entry is non-existent. Anybody can create a website or a social media presence. So you need something that is going to differentiate you. And that needs to be a sort of unique value proposition, unique selling proposition, whatever it is that you need to create. And then with that has to be a compelling offer. When you combine those two, that will put you right above your competitors and really create a solution that people will gravitate towards. That's critical.
Important. I know many small business owners get overwhelmed by this doing it all syndrome. What do you recommend to them, and how do they overcome this? Hey, you need to let go of the task and get it done by somebody else.
That's exactly the case. So in my coaching business, one of the first things that we touch upon after we look at how to create that compelling offer, et cetera, is how do you manage your time? Because every business owner has that challenge where they want to do it all themselves, and there's no way to scale when you do so. So after we do time management, then we start working on how they can properly delegate. Because the only way that a business will grow, and again, I'm a growth advisor, is to delegate tasks so that you create additional bandwidth. Otherwise, you're limited to your 40 to 80 hours a week or whatever, and there is a point of diminishing returns. Where you just are not as productive in hour 90 as you would be in hour 20.
Right.
And the whole reason a lot of entrepreneurs went into business is so that they have control of their lives. So if they're letting the business run their lives, then all they've done is trade in their employment option as another employee instead.
That's so true. It's very, very important to understand the value that you're offering. It doesn't have to equate to the what you were earning before. It can be much, much more valuable to the other.
Correct. I mean, there's an opportunity there to spend more time with family, to do more vacations, just do whatever it is that is suitable and it makes you happy. But in order to do that, you do have to give up a little bit of your business. And part of also what I help too is to attract and retain the right employees, because that's critical as well. You don't want to delegate a task to someone that will not do as comprehensive of a job as you would. So finding the right person that you can trust is critical.
Cool. So we're almost to the end before we get into the rapid fire section. One question I wanted to ask you is, what's next for Rupture and what's next for Fernando? And as you innovate, as you continue to innovate and help other businesses grow.
So what's next is really trying to spread and learn more about other industries. So financial services, of course, is a specialization, But as I get new smaller business clients, then I start to build a lot of best practices in those industries. So that's one of the big things. But longer term, it's probably going to be to bring on some additional fractional CMOs and coaches into my organization that will be on a full-time basis. So instead of farming some of the work out to freelancers, et cetera, it'll be to sort of build my empire and really create an organization that is meeting the needs of what these various industries out there need, which is not just technology advice, but really how to grow business, making use of all the tools that are available to us today as small business owners.
Oh, great. Before we, ask for your details about how can people contact you, I want to ask them some rapid fire questions.
Absolutely.
We introduce a section just to get to know a little bit more about you and as a person. So what book that you would recommend to every small business owner or every business owner?
I know he's a little controversial, but I like Alex Hormozy's $100 million offers.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And he's a cold email marketing guru, right?
He is. And the reason I like that is because I mentioned before that you've got to differentiate yourself. And so some of his methods are a little off the wall. Yeah. Exactly. But his core message is on point, I believe, which is that you've got to create something that people are going to gravitate towards. And a lot of companies just don't do that. I have so many case studies showing that a company will put a website out there and they're like, we're the best because everyone says so. That does nothing. Right. So that's why I like that book.
Awesome. What's your favorite app or productivity tool that you cannot live without?
OneNote. I use it all the time. And I know it's not a productivity tool, but what I like is that in the middle of something, I'm taking notes and then I have it accessible from my laptop. It's accessible on my phone. And the minute that I press enter, then it's propagates across the network. So that's something that I use very often.
I use Evernote. I used to use Evernote, but I did use OneNote and BOA, but I use Evernote. I love it. Yep. So what's the best piece of advice you ever received?
That has been to always look out for yourself. And I didn't listen because I had heard this from one of my managers years ago, was a former Wall Street veteran. And he said, it's ugly out there. And I never believed him. But then after going through the 3 layoffs, so it's remember that you are just as an employee, you're a part of the machine. And even if you receive accolades and awards and everything, it can all be gone tomorrow. So always build your skill set and always look out for yourself because ultimately at the end of the day, you're the only one that controls your own future.
Yeah. In my opinion, keep building your network.
Correct.
Network builds your net worth.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And that is a tough one because it's an activity that feels unnatural to a lot of people. But even though I consider myself outgoing, but it is still uncomfortable to really nurture that network and keep those connections going.
Cool. So if you were given a choice to pick only one, what would you pick? Digital marketing or traditional marketing for a year?
I would choose digital, and the reason why is because I think that it's scalable beyond what traditional does, measurable, and then there's still unexplored territories out there. There's something always coming up new and innovative, and if you jump on it quickly, you can really scale your business. Yeah,
I've a lot of people have scaled on Instagram and now YouTube too.
Yeah,
especially after it started. YouTube has been monetizable for quite some time, but I find that it started finding its true value recently, post-COVID.
For sure.
One word that the best describes your approach to business growth?
I would say probably tenacious.
Nice.
So I always look for a solution regardless of what the circumstances would be. And I was this way when I was working in banking, and sometimes it would get me in trouble. And I'm that way now as a growth advisor and as a fractional CMO. Always, look at what might be considered non-traditional or unconventional. And as long as it fits what you need and it passes the regulatory means test, then go for it.
Yep. What's one activity that you use to unwind after a tough day?
I actually do the backwards. So I start my day tough and I go to the gym every morning at 5 a.m. Yes, because that's, I'll be home by 6:30. Okay. So to start the day, then at that point, not that I'm working out the entire time because there's commute and some rest time involved, but that's what I do. And then I do Muay Thai kickboxing 2 days a week at least. And that helps to sort of get me grounded again.
Cool. If you were to mentor yourself, like a younger yourself, what would you tell him?
Really prepare for that entrepreneurship journey. So I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but then once you get into banking, you start seeing the big paychecks, and they lock you in. Exactly. And so I saw entrepreneurship as a huge risk, letting go of all of that. But now I see that it really isn't a given. So I would say prepare myself again so that when the inevitable happens, then I'm well positioned so that I can just springboard and take control of myself.
You mentioned earlier that, don't wait for the layoff to happen. Have a plan B in place and work towards it part-time. And then as these things like this happen, you're ready to jump.
And I was doing some of that before because I had dabbled in affiliate marketing, and actually before Google started slapping down the questionable SEO practices, I was making a pretty good side living doing that.
Nice.
But unfortunately, that all came crashing down, and I'd never really pursued going further. So I should have, because that would have again positioned me a little better than I ended up being.
Right. And what's the biggest challenge you've ever faced?
Biggest challenge is probably this whole part of becoming an entrepreneur. Unplanned entrepreneur is what I'll call it.
A forced entrepreneur.
Exactly. And it's not that I mean, I'm absolutely happy where I am now, but it's just that I had reached, SVP level, and I was making a pretty good income. And then at that point, it's all taken away.
Go off,
Yes. So of course, when you make more money, your lifestyle reaches a certain stage, and all of a sudden, when that faucet gets turned off, then it's eye-opening to say the least.
Cool. Coffee or tea? What makes your day?
Actually prefer smoothies, but if those two, I'll go with tea.
Smoothies are a good answer.
But coffee's a little too bitter, and then when you add too much sugar, it's no longer coffee. So I just go with tea.
Smoothies, protein
well,
shakes.
Yeah, that's what I do. The protein shakes. Yeah. So Smoothie King's one of my favorite places.
Oh, nice. Okay. And this is a difficult one. What's the most underrated quality of a great leader?
I would say remembering where they came from. So I think a lot of leaders forget what it's like to be a subordinate. And as a result of that, they create a little bit of friction, or maybe an us versus them mentality. So I always like to put myself in the shoes of those that I'm leading and understand what their motivations are, what their concerns are, and just try to be personable. I know it's difficult, especially when you're getting pressured from other directions, but ultimately that team is what's going to help you succeed in the long run.
Great. Before we end, I definitely want you to let the audience know how they can reach you. I know many of them will look you up. If there are potential clients, if they want to know more, how can they get in touch with you?
Sure. So you can go to rockture.com. That's ROKTURE.com. And also you can find me on LinkedIn as well. Fernando Pena. There's probably a number of us, but hopefully only one that looks like me.
Charlotte.
Exactly.
Great. And an email?
And then email is FPENA, so just first initial last name, @rockture.com.
Yeah. Fernando, it was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you. And I appreciate it.
I hope you liked it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and look forward to having many conversations. Since you're a digital marketing expert, we will probably dive into more of that subject.
Yes, I would love to bounce ideas off of you. I'm sure we can help each other out there.
Absolutely. So thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey guys, I hope you really liked the video. And if you did, please like, subscribe, and comment. And we would like to reach many more small business owners. I would really appreciate if you can share the video with them as well. Thank you, and see you until next time. Have a great one.